It all started in the 13th century with temples like these. Exquisitely carved, these monuments are powerful reminders of the high level of craftsmanship that existed then. Thankfully, these skills are alive even today. Located around the capital of Orissa is the Bhubaneswar stone carving cluster. Production takes place either in household units or in the larger craft production centres which are owned and managed by master craftsmen. All in all, the cluster has an estimated annual turnover of 2.5 crore rupees. However, not all is well with this historic cluster. Craft units do not have work all through the year. Workers often do not get their wages, and many of the household artisans are on the brinks of poverty.
मुझे पत्थर काम जानी सुधा मो पाखे कौन पैसा पतर ना पत्थर आने मुझे बड़ बड़ फैक्ट्री मान जाई जो मैंने पत्थर सब फिंगी दौरान छोट छोट पत्थर आनी निजे कम करी पाख बजार में बिकी मोर गुजराण मेटाऊँगी एवं मोर पैसा पत्र किसी आवश्यक पड़ू दा छेली थे से गुड़ाक बजार में बिकी किसी पैसा है से पत्थर आनी कम कर आग को कौन करी मो पाखे तो आदम पैसा पतर ना कौन करी किसी स्थिर कर।
So what could be done to make the cluster dynamic and reduce the level of poverty? In order to address these issues, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, or UNIDO, in partnership with the government of Orissa, initiated a cluster development program. That was in 2005.
The cluster development approach hinges largely on joint action from the producers. See, there are a lot of things in a cluster which individual producers on their own cannot do or cannot handle. The cluster approach trains people, creates platforms and helps them take joint actions towards solving their problems and sometimes exploiting the opportunities that they have.
At the outset, the program carried out a detailed diagnostic study in order to understand the kind of challenges being faced by the cluster. The diagnostic study revealed that the artisans did not have strong institutions of their own. They faced a shortage of credit and were hampered by weak market linkages. There were artisans whose skills needed upgradation, and the cluster had not absorbed any new technologies. Before the program, master craftsmen who ran their own craft production units were fragmented. They had no result-oriented institutions of their own. And as a result, they could not overcome critical hurdles like a chronic shortage of working capital.
आगुर सारा आमर बहुत असुविधा थिला आमे भी एककालना पत्थर किनिया पैसा पत्र भी होन थला तेणु सीजन ऑफ सीजन रे किछि आमर नै आमे प्राय बसी रहथलु जहा फल कि निजर परिवार चलाया बहुत असुविधा हमको होथिला पिला पाठ पढ़िया रे माने निजर मेंटेनेंस पई आमे सर बहुत असुविधार सम्मुखीन होथलु.
But why could they not get loans to tide over the immediate capital needs?
The banks were not supporting the individual units because the paperwork for getting loan of the individuals were not complete. So what we did, we approached some of the microfinance institutions who showed interest, but on one condition, that they can support only groups.
However, getting these master craftsmen to form a group was not easy.
It was very difficult to form the group of these stone carving artisans here, because there are a lot of unhealthy competition among themselves. There are lack of trust among themselves. They were because the opportunity of marketing was very low. There are a lot of infighting among themselves. So I had to spend a lot of time, and I also initially I became frustrated also because I couldn't find many good results. And then slowly and gradually I persuaded them, and only a few members came forward to form a group and then start experimenting with some of the group activities.
These were the master craftsmen who set up their registered self-help cooperative in Konark, and as a result, they were able to get loans from the microfinance institution.
आम भी एककालना पत्थर कि किणी पारिछु काम जो सफिशिएंट पाउ नथुलु सफिशिएंट काम भी करि पारुछु काम करा द्वारा हमर भी रोजगार भी बढ़िछि तेणु जो वर्कर मैंने पैसा ठीक से पाई पार नथिले से माने भी पैसा ठीक से पाउछंती मोर वर्कसाइट भी मु मरामती भी करिछि आउ दुकानटे सेपटे करी भाग ही करिछु ता संगे मु मोर पुंजी भी किछि खटैछि.
This is the retail outlet that Shyam Sundar Maharana was referring to. Located right near one of the main roads in Konark, this outlet is another result of the group initiative.
एक्चुअल प्रथम आम कम करूँ जेजार जे कम कर व्यवसायी मानक दौलू से मार्जिन आमको कम मिलता आम जो ग्रुप करापर ये आम चिंता कलु गोटे सेल्स आउटलेट करूँ जो सेल्स आउटलेट कलु ये डायरेक्ट कस्टमर जो ने आमको 30% मार्जिन मिलला जोटा कि डायरेक्ट आम पाक आसला मिडलमैन कहीं रही.
Another problem for craftsmen working in isolation is one of marketing. It is difficult for them to create direct linkages with more demanding markets. However, as groups, new possibilities emerge.
पूर्वर तो सारे आम कम ही लोकल बेपारी मानक दौलू तर प्रोग्राम माध्यम आम बाहर को जो गलु जानलु जे सेंट्रल कटेज इंडस्ट्रीज कॉर्पोरेशन जो दिल्ली अच्छी से कम किणुंट से आम फोटोग्राफ्स आउ कि सैंपल नहीं गलु जापर सी आम सैंपल को पसंद कले फोटोग्राफ देखिले तापर सी कहले तुम कम दे पार आमको लगे आम गोटे ग्रुप अच्छी 10-12 जन ग्रुप अच्छी आम जिते कम देवे आम से क्वालिटर काम भी आम दे पारू तापर से आम जो कम करूँ किसी नुआ कम विषय देखिलु देखा कम नहीं गलु नवापर मार्जिन भल मिलूँ से भी आम बारंबार ऑर्डर दौरान वर्ष को बहुत ऑर्डर दौरान आम नहीं दौर मार्जिन जोटा कि आम 5% पाऊँ से 40-50% पाऊँ.
The question still remains. Why did the master craftsmen not take such initiatives earlier?
आम सेमत सुविधा के पाई नथिलु जेजार जे काम करे गोटे कारीगर थिला ना के का पाउ गोटे जाई पार नथिलु आउ निजे खटू निजे जाई पारू तेणु सेमिति के भाबिनु जे एमिति गोटे कले कौन सुफल मिलबो एमिति चिंता भी करनथलु.
In Bhubaneswar too, some master craftsmen came together and formed their own group. One of its early initiatives was an exposure visit to other stone carving clusters.
As a part of our trust building exercise, we took the members of this group, around 12 of them, to Jaipur, and in Jaipur particularly to Sikandara.
आमे जयपुर जाइथिलु सेठारे सबू भल भल संस्था सब बुली देखिलु सेठारे सब कौन कर ना सब मेसिनरी यूज करिकी माने बढ़िया बढ़िया जिनस कम समय भितर प्रोडक्शन बाहर करछंती फेरला पर हमर जो प्रोग्राम माध्यम रे हमर गोटे सप्लाई सिंडिकेट अच्छी ताकू गोटे डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन पई डकैलु से माने आसिक आमको सब मेसिनरी बाबद डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन कले कला पर आमे जो प्रोग्राम माध्यम जो ग्रुप हे जाइथिलु जते जण तांकर जार जा रिक्वायरमेंट जार जा इच्छा से अनुसार मेसिन मध्य किनिलु आनला परे आमे सेटा को आनिकी हम संस्था रे यूज करलु जोटा कि देखिलु आमे कम मैन पावर रे आउ शीघ्र मध्य एटा प्रोडक्शन हे पारु आ भलो क्वालिटी मध्य यूज करि होउची.
For instance, this was how artisans were cutting stone in the past. And this is how they are doing it now. Clearly, the Jaipur trip has made a lot of impact on the master craftsmen. But where did they get the capital to buy these machines? Again, since they were a part of a registered group, they could get loans from microfinance institutions. Meanwhile, there has been another important outcome of group formation. Master craftsmen have started taking much bigger orders.
ग्रुप कला पर लाभ है सुसंपर्क बढ़ला गोटे ऑर्डर आसला भितर जदि ऑर्डर मो पाक अधिका पड़े आसला काम न कर ऑर्डर कैंसल होता ग्रुप हवा द्वारा बांटी काम करदेलु ऑर्डर से लोकर फिलअप होगा सी नहीं गला आउ गोटे आम कारीगर मान जो मैंने काम कर सी कारीगर भाई माने कारीगर मानक नहीं जाते कि कारीगर को मुझे आसुली ये हवा द्वारा आउ किए का कारीगर को नौना सी तुम बाटे तो आम आम बाटे ता द्वारा पत्थर खणिकी जदि किए गला जनकर पत्थर देखला दिखाई ऑर्डर सी देखला मो ग्रुप भाई तो सी आउ से पत्थरटा को नापी कलानी कि द्वारा सी भी बुझी दे आसला द्वारा आम जीवा आसवा भी सल्व होगला.
Like their counterparts in Konark and Bhubaneswar, these master craftsmen in Puri have also formed their own group. And this has already translated into a powerful marketing initiative.
The master craftsmen here, they are totally depending on the local traders, and the margin was very low, less than 5% also in many cases. So we thought that we will possibly link them to some of the national buyers where they will get better margin. So what we did is we went around in the national market, then we made a list of the national buyers, particularly in Jaipur, Delhi and other big cities, and we shared this information with the group of master craftsmen here. And based on this information, they went on an exposure visit, and they also shared the samples with these national buyers, and they got linked with these national buyers, and this is continuing on.
The master craftsmen, who are now getting much better margins, are quick to acknowledge the impact of the program and the advantages of group formation.
ये प्रोग्राम माध्यम गलांगर सेमान सहित सूचना मिला आगु सूचना नथला सेमानक सहित तापरे ग्रुप माध्यम गलांगर कस्टमर मान ग्राहक सहित साहस बढ़ुच कथावार्ता कर भल होला आउ प्रोग्राम माध्यम रे ग्रुप माध्यम रे आमे बहुत जिनस तांकर आम जोगई पारछु एकुटिया जोटा जोगई होनथला सेमानकर भी विश्वास आछे ना ए माने जोगई पारिबे.
The group has now taken other initiatives to strengthen its linkages with more demanding markets.
आमे ग्रुप माध्यम रे जयपुर स्टोन मार्ट एग्जिबिशन जाइतलो सेटा भारतर सबुठु बड़ पत्थर शिल्प प्रदर्शनी सेठी गोटे ट्रक लोड जिनस नैथलु हमर आशा नथला गोटे दिन रे सब जिनस बिक्री हो बोली सेठी जो ग्राहक आसला तांकटु आमे बहुत कथा जानलु केमती डीलिंग्स करिया पड़े केमती प्राइस करिया को हुए ग्राहक मानकर डिमांड कोन आमे बहुत कथा सिखिलु.
As more master craftsmen get together and take new initiatives, there is every reason to believe that they will prosper. And along with this prosperity will come more jobs, bigger salaries and better working conditions for the employees. But what about the household artisans? Many like Bhubaneswar from Rawalpatna had been struggling. Like he mentioned earlier, he survived by working on stones discarded by the bigger units. 2 years ago, he became a part of the cluster development program. Along with 4 others, he formed a joint liability group and was able to get some loan for his working capital needs.
आमे 5 जण ग्रुप होला परे काश फाउंडेशन हमको 5000 टंका लखा ऋण देले एवं से टंका को आनी बाजार रो म यथेष्ट परिमाण रे पत्थर आनिली पत्थर आनला परे किछि कारीगर मध्ये पाखर रखली एवं मते बाहर लोकंकर ऑर्डर मध्ये मिलिला एवं से ऑर्डर अनुसार आमे काम करी देला परे किछि भल रोजगार मध्ये हला एबे संपूर्ण रूप से रोजगार बढ़ी एवं मोर परिस्थिति आर्थिक परिस्थिति मध्ये बदल जाइछि.
Group formation works. In Rawalpatna, it has allowed collaborating household artisans to access credit for their working capital needs. And in Nagpur village, it has helped to improve the skill levels of women. Many of the household artisans in the Stonecraft cluster are women. Usually, they're engaged in making small products that require very little skills. As a result, their incomes are among the lowest in the cluster. As a part of the cluster development program, women in Nagpur have come together and formed their own self-help cooperative society. This microcredit group has even been able to organize training programs for its members. As a result, Mamta, a former trainee, is now able to add more value to her products.
ଆମର ଛୋଟ କାମ କରିଥିଲୁ କିଛି डिजाइन नथिला सेतरे खाली रफ काम थिला प्लेट काटी देथुलु मशीन रे काटिके सेलिंग कर देउथुलु ए बड़ काम हला बड़ काम रु आमे सब सिखिलु डिजाइन बहुत विभिन्न प्रकार डिजाइन सिखिलु इंच सिखिलु तापरे जो माने 4 इंच करबो केति इंच माप करके आमे भी जानि पाइलु मापटा जानि नथुलु सेगुरा भी जानिलु तापरे जो हाथी घोड़ा स्टैंड सब केमिति को जगह रे बसे आमे जानि नथुलु सेगुरा भी जानिलु एगुरा को स्टैंड रे एपट बसिबो सेटा एपट बसिबो एगुरा सब जानिलु.
Empowered by the new skills, women have been able to increase their earnings.
छोटो कामरु आमे मासु 1200 एमती इनकम करू से किछि हमकु अंटेनी हम घर खर्च रे कुआडे लागि जाय जिंदी ट्रेनिंग पर बड़ काम कलु 2000 पर रोजगार कलु 2000 पर रोजगार कला परे आमे पिलांको खर्च कलु बही खाता ट्यूशन दरमा स्कूल दरमा तापरे एमती घर रो चावल किना सब एमती हम सब सर कलु.
One issue that emerged in the diagnostic study was the high prevalence of illnesses in the stone carving communities. Treatment was expensive for poor families, and the working days lost simply made it worse.
Like other villages in the area, the villagers here also suffer from many health-related problems. Particularly, they suffer a lot of seasonal diseases like diarrhea, dengue fever, and other skin diseases. Other than that, they also suffer from a lot of these craft-related problems like backache, like eye problems, and these are the problems. And they also don't have any health coverage for them also.
In Nagpur village, the women's group has been active in addressing some of these issues.
प्रोग्राम माध्यम हेल्थ कैंप कलु हेल्थ कैंप बाहर डॉक्टर आसिले डॉक्टर आसिक आमको किसी मेडिसिन देले चेकअप भी कले आम सब औषध नहीं कि आसलु तापर हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस है हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस आम 25,000 कैंप क्लेम पाइलु.
The group has also been able to use an existing government program to get sanitary latrines constructed for many villagers.
आगुरु आम किसी जानी नथिलु प्रोग्राम माध्यम रे किसी जानिलु सरकारंकर किसी स्कीम अछि बोली जानिला परे मेंबर पिछा 200 लेखा देलु दबा परे सरकारंक तरफ 1200 टंका लेखा पाइलु पाइबा परे समस्त गोटे गोटे लाटिन कलु सेतरु बेनिफिट हेलु.
Addressing social issues, building institutions, facilitating credit, upgrading skills, introducing new technologies, and strengthening market linkages. A unique feature of the cluster development approach is that it deals with the entire value chain. That's because it believes strongly that it is value chains and not individual firms that compete in the market. And facilitating positive changes along this chain is an important professional, the Cluster Development Agent or the CDA.
A cluster development agent is a change agent placed in the cluster who has been trained extensively in the art and science of cluster development. The agent is able to identify the critical bottlenecks facing the cluster, and then by inducing collaboration between various producers and various other cluster actors, he or she is able to find solutions to those critical bottlenecks.
So what makes for a successful cluster development agent or CDA?
CDA also has to have big ears, somebody who's willing to listen, somebody who's willing to understand the issues, somebody who's willing to go out to those steps of the people and pick up the real constraints that they face. Cluster development agent may or may not be a subject expert. For example, in a weaving cluster, it is not essential that the CDA is an expert in weaving or in dyeing. But what a CDA essentially specializes in is the ability to locate solutions and bring those solutions through networking to the cluster.
Interacting constantly with the entrepreneurs and often drawn from the community is the network development agent.
Quite often the clusters that we work in are widely spread, either over few villages or over few industrial areas. In such cases, it's not feasible for a CDA to be in touch with the networks, with the SHGs, with the federations on a day-to-day basis. Quite often, people from the community, boys and girls from the community, are taken in as network development agents who look after these networks, these groups, handhold them in day-to-day decisions and find solutions to critical bottlenecks.
Effective cluster development agents and network development agents can set into motion an important process of change. In the stone carvers cluster, for instance, around 200 artisans have been able to access credit of more than 75 lakh rupees. 150 household artisans have increased their incomes by 400 to 500 rupees per month. Similarly, 50 craft production units have increased their monthly profits by nearly 1,000 rupees. And availability of working capital has led to an increase of around 1.5 crore rupees in sales. Clearly, the seeds of change have been planted.